Gulen is, in one short sentence, is considered by those of us from outside looking in, is a formidable ambassador interpreter of the most sublime, most authentic underpinnings of not just Islamic tradition, spiritual traditions. The Hizmet movement for having over essence of Islam. I'm a student of the Eastern philosophical traditions. That's perhaps the best introduction I can give of myself. In terms of my background, I'm involved in many different hats, but my main passion is the Eastern philosophical traditions and the interfaith initiatives that take place in Toronto. I'm in the board of interfaith organizations, and that's what I spend most of my time on. I don't think there's anyone in Toronto who would not know of the Hizmet movement, directly or indirectly. At least those of us in the Interfaith movement, hardly anyone that I can think of who would not be aware of the wonderful initiatives that have been taking place in the city. I can't remember a single point, but it's been so much de rigueur. If you're an Interfaith, you are part of the Hizmet movement. Not only aware of it, but part of it. Although it's very clearly enunciates that it's not a religious movement. It is not a religious movement or political movement, but the underpinnings are Islamic. And that is where some of us, many of us, feel that even though civilizations are considered to be collective collective results of all the societies, and cultural cultural thoughts are considered to be particular to one particular set of people, group of people, race, etc., ethnicity. But no, there are certain things that are collective heritage. In the 17th century Islam, I'm a Hindu, is my collective heritage also. So the collective heritage, it's something which recently in the last 50-60 years has taken a turn which is not to the liking of many of us, even though it's my collective heritage, Islamic tradition. So the Hizmet movement then, I take pride in that because it brings me back to my collective heritage as a human being, as a person on this planet, of what Islam had contributed to all of us: poetry, art, culture, literature, science, and all those things. So Hizmet movement is not a political movement, not a religious movement in the sense only we good, you're not good, or defensive, but it has been bringing forth the best in what I personally and others like me consider it our collective heritage also. And that's been my impression of the Hizmet movement. Fethullah Gulen is, in one short sentence, is considered by those of us from outside looking in, is a formidable ambassador interpreter of the most sublime, most authentic underpinnings of not just Islamic tradition, spiritual traditions. So he's the extraordinary ambassador interpreter, and that shows what I'm saying right now may not be remembered after 2 minutes. What other people say may be remembered or heard of or remembered, or someone may recall a couple of days or months or whatever. But what the prophets and sages have said is remembered thousands of years after they've gone. And Fethullah Gulen is along those lines. His personal silence, seclusion that he's been following the last 8-10 years, in the depth of his silence, the praise that he says, not just praise for himself or from his tradition, but the names of the ultimate reality of no name, 1,000 names, that he says 6, 7, 8, 10 times. Zikr. Praise for others. Seclusion. Not withdrawing from everything, still being in the world, still writing, inspiring, continuing to write and inspire, but still in silence. And whatever he's getting across from the depth of silence, that makes him one of the extraordinary ambassadors, interpreters of the underpinnings of the sages of the past. And he's a sage himself in the making. In our tradition, there's a Sanskrit expression called Sarva Tantra Siddhant, which means in a sort of a descriptive way, imagine, if you wish, that there are a perfect square, that my belief is a perfect square, absolutely perfect. And all of the belief systems, thought processes, beliefs, etc. are funny shapes, squiggly funny shape. Mine is a perfect square. That's the pedantic view. The next view is a bit more egalitarian, and that is every square has a square and a square and a square and a square. Everything is square, no funny shapes. Each have their internal logic, consistency. That's what you and I are. We don't make one different than the other. They're all perfect, but still mine is the outer one. Mine is slightly better than the other, it's outer one. That's our view. And then the view taken by someone like Fethullah Gulen and people that he speaks of, that he emulates, sages, is a perfect square in which there are triangles. And each triangle has its own internal logic, consistency, rituals, modes of conduct, and rules, regulations prescribed. But each triangle points to one center. And each triangle is within the square. It follows the properties of the triangle, but also that of the square. So no one triangle is better than the other. But what sets the Hizmet movement apart from many others is that it encourages those within the triangle of the Hizmet movement, or in this case Islam, Turkish Islam, to move out of the triangle and visit all the other triangles and have other people from other triangles come and visit. So that Sarva Tantra Siddhant is so predominantly evident in all that the IDI and IDI's branches and colleagues and not just in Canada or in North America, but throughout the world, that one sees in all fields of life. And that's something that truly sets it apart, to not only theoretically be aware of that Sarva Tantra Siddhant, but to apply it in everything that IDI and his colleagues do throughout the world. Subtlest, truest essence of Islam, there is not a caution, there is a realization or realistic assessment also that each of the faith traditions were introduced by prophets and sages. We are not at that level. We, those who by accident of birth were born into that parentage, we are not at the same level, so we have a tendency to creating viruses. Just like in our computer programs. We distort it because our understandings are limited. Our understandings are not that level of the enunciators, the founders, the ones to whom the revealed wisdom came. So, the simple example would be that two people can read, quote, understand, refer to the same scriptures, exactly the same scriptures, no different. But one's understanding is so vastly different opposed to that of the other. In our context, Gandhiji's name is well known, and Gandhiji was assassinated. The assassin quoted from the Bhagavad Gita, and so did Gandhiji. The assassin loved India, so did Gandhiji. The assassin loved India to such an extent that he wanted to protect India from Gandhiji's love for other faith traditions. So when he shot Gandhiji, he touched his feet in reverence to Gandhiji. I revere you, but you are dangerous to my country. And Gandhiji, while he's dying, he blessed the assassin. But both came from the same sources. So one is a bit higher level of consciousness, that is lower, sources are the same. So Islam in that sense, Hizmet movement in Islam is one of the same, but Hizmet movement presents the finest, subtlest, truest essence of Islam, which others tend to have distorted in periods of cycles. Not always, pendulum swing. It has been said that we reached a fork in the road where it is no longer sufficient to be tolerant of other faith traditions. Not sufficient just to be tolerant or accepting, but to actually share in the belief systems, share in the rituals, not belief system necessarily, share in the rituals, those ceremonies, if you wish, to share in the ceremonies, to cross over and share in the ceremonies, and that is the Noah's pudding, the iftar dinners, the visiting of the families. So it's not just intellect or debates or conversation, which are essential, and they take place all the places, but the sharing of inviting people to your homes. That sharing which removes the barricades, which sets the Hizmet movement apart on a consistent basis, not just a flash in the pan 1 year or 2 years, but consistently year after year after year after year, and that it sets it apart, for which the rest of us express our gratitude. Absolutely essential, and my immediate reaction is a sense of gratitude for the rest of us, in particular the Hizmet movement, for having overcome, continue to overcome those inevitable, not only questionings, but inevitable criticism, if you wish. Because that's part of the cross we have to bear. For every 100 new admirers of any initiative, there'll be at least 10% who cannot stand the attention being given. So that's to be expected, understood. It's always been there. Hardly any person of sages, prophets who escaped that. Jesus of Nazareth, Prophet Muhammad, sages of the East, they all had those challenges, if you wish. But to persevere, despite those criticisms which are inevitable, as forces of life, not only persevere but to flourish, for which all people like me can say expressing a gratitude. The dialogue between, not among ourselves, but the dialogue discussion, and not only dialogue discussion in a speaking sense, but as I mentioned a few minutes ago, Mr. Gulen's going into seclusion, not withdrawing from the world, very much there, but still not there. In the ancient tradition of the Eastern, of the Indian background is, sage who is awake when others are asleep, and he is asleep when others are awake. So the dialogue is also taking place even as he is in silence. I think that was a remarkable insight on his part to have recognized the importance of education as a springboard, but that was only as a springboard. The education has been there, the mainstay of the state governments, national governments, local governments. But for him to have captured the imagination, and when he saw the opportunities, as an example, when Soviet Union dissolved or became separate countries, and the other countries nearby where the education was lacking behind. So him, or not him, but his movement, if you wish, not his Hizmet movement, I think that's one of the other things that sets Mr. Gulen apart, is that he has never, ever hinted at that he should be revered, or he should be taken in as a sacred symbol, if you wish. But he is only, as I said again, to people like ambassador interpreter. So for him to have taken the initiative of education as a springboard, education spring, which is a long-lasting effect. You don't see the results immediately. You may see it after 20, 30 years. You see the results perhaps not in their lifetime, people are being educated, but in the life of their children and grandchildren. It's a long-term effect. So, but him having seen that as a springboard for the success of the movement is remarkable. The alleviating the suffering of others is not only in terms of thought process, saying that your suffering may be alleviated or giving benediction or giving blessings, but actually working towards that. So that's a very natural outpouring, very natural next step. Hoping and praying and wishing that somewhere through all these initiatives like the education, poverty reduction and dialogue, that there could also be a Hizmet movement corollary of all the other faith traditions also coming together, not just Islamic, but Hizmet, another word, another phrase, but emulating Gulen's formula, if you wish, on a larger scale. And that would be a dream come true, if it could be orchestrated.
I think the Hizmet movement here in a North American context does a very good job of welcoming people in, non-Muslims, and encouraging their understanding and appreciation of one of the world's fundamental and very important religions.
My views of the Hizmet movement is something that speaks to a movement that is faith on the ground, faith in action.